I want to make this video, but at the same time, I know it's going to be really hard to film. So this month I'm celebrating like the most painful anniversary that comes about. Usually your anniversary is celebrating 1 year of you being in a relationship or an anniversary of you being friends with someone. This was the anniversary of my best friend's death. And that's the first anniversary of someone dying that has really been extremely difficult for me because she was present in my life every single day. I made a video back in August talking about my grieving process and what it was like to lose her. And that was just because when I first lost Sarah through suicide, I knew I was always searching for anyone that could give me some sort of comfort. I didn't really know how to explain what I was feeling at that time. But I remember coming to YouTube, which has always been an incredibly important community to me, and I remember looking at anything from BuzzFeed videos to Anna Khanna's video about suicide and just looking for people that could resonate with me and speak to me individually at what this process is like, because I just had no idea what I was in for, and I of course never wanted to confront that reality. And I always knew I wanted to speak more about this just because I think it's such a stupidly taboo topic and no one tells you about grief. No one talks about their grief very openly. But it's so powerful and so healthy to have other people that understand it and that get it. And especially given that 13 Reasons Why has been so popular lately and a bunch of YouTubers have been making videos about suicide, I've just been pretty upset, quite frankly, with the way that suicide has been portrayed in that series. I read the book when I was like, 12 or 13. Before I ever really had known anyone with a mental illness, had known about suicide. I didn't think much of it then, but now being on the other side and having my best friend commit suicide, quite frankly, it's insulting to say that telling someone that you love them or telling them why they're important or paying more attention to them could have saved their life. That's a really, really dangerous thing to say, to put guilt and burden on the people around you to keep you alive. And the show really didn't mention mental illness much at all. I haven't watched an episode, but I've read the book and I understand the perspective of it. Not talking about mental illness when you're talking about suicide is just ignorant. If love could have saved my best friend, she would have lived forever. She had so much love coming from everyone. I supported her day in, day out. I gave her everything I really feasibly could. A lot of people don't acknowledge that depression and anxiety and mental illnesses have so much to do with it. And these diseases, these mental illnesses, they have a vice grip on your thinking. And as much as you in your heart know that people love you and you can read messages of how much they love you and they can tell you that in person, this mental illness has a vice grip on your thinking and it's telling you that you are not worth it and that, I can't personally vouch for what it tells you in your brain, but hearing from Sarah and hearing from the number of sources that have talked to me since then, it's just like there's so much polluting your brain that is just such toxic thinking that depression and anxiety and these mental illnesses do, that someone telling you they love you, yes, that definitely helps and you need people that support you, but that's not ultimately what's going to save people. So go ahead, you can tell everyone in your life how much they mean to you, but just know that that isn't enough. You have to treat these things. Mental illnesses aren't curable, but they are treatable and people can live their daily lives with them. What you need to know is that there are no magical words or gestures that you can do that will make a suicidal person want to live. 13 Reasons Why makes you feel like your kindness can fix someone when that is just flat out a horrible line of thinking. You have to understand that people who lose their loved ones to suicide are already thinking in some ways that they're to blame and that somehow something they didn't do caused it. And this show is saying that these kids need to take more culpability for their actions when it's like, no, you shouldn't be telling people whose friends have committed suicide that they should feel more guilty for not being more present. Sarah had more than love. She did get professional treatment. And even people that have had made multiple attempts that are going through treatment, it's just still such a powerful disorder and disease that you have to acknowledge that just being kind, that's not enough to cure someone. Your kindness isn't a cure. That's not how mental illnesses work, and I wish they were. I wish that love could have saved her, but it did not. And so I just want to clear up the misconception that somehow you not being nice enough to someone is the reason that they have depression. That is not the case. It comes down to, if you do see that, yes, of course you should be more open with your friends and be able to have these difficult conversations and ask how they're truly doing. But once they tell you that they're not doing well, you cannot be their counselor and their psychiatrist, and you cannot diagnose them. You have to refer them to someone who has more experience with that. When I first lost Sarah, I was really, really upset that she would do that. And I was frustrated that she would leave me and that she didn't keep fighting. And a year out of it, having to talk to more people who have dealt with these things, I'm just upset that anyone has to endure that level of pain. You have to understand the insane amount of pain someone is in to want to commit suicide. In order to improve the suicide problem, we have to understand why people do this in the first place, and that has to do with mental illness, not maybe a lack of compassion, although that is a component, but the mental illness part of it is so huge. You have to imagine this is a pain so overwhelming to them that they would rather not experience anything at all and be gone from this earth than experience that pain. That is something so incredibly huge. And to deny them treatment as a healthcare provider, or to deny them treatment as a parent, or to not send them to treatment as a friend is just such a lapse of judgment there. Suicide itself, as something to grieve over, is just such a different kind of death to think about, because it doesn't feel terminal. It doesn't feel like it had to happen. When you know someone that has, terminal cancer, or if you know someone that died in a car crash or something like that, you know that like there was no survivable chance of that like that impact, that event that was terminal and that was death inducing. We don't think of mental illnesses as terminal. We don't think that those should be a reason to die, because depression, that doesn't kill you, the suicide does. And so to me, it always feels like it didn't have to happen. And it doesn't have to happen. Suicide doesn't have to happen. It's not a solution. And a lot of people, when I posted my first video talking about this, they told me that like soon you'll be okay with it, or soon you'll come to terms with it. And I know that notion came from a good place, but that's just as wrong, because I will never be okay. I'll never be okay with my best friend not being here. She was supposed to be here, and any of you that are watching this, like, you were supposed to be here. You're supposed to be alive. You might not think, even if you don't think you are, like I'm telling you right now, you are supposed to be here. And saying she's in a better place is just insulting, because there was no better place for her than right here on Earth. And there was a lot of people in the first month or two of my grieving that just told me so much that just made no sense to me, and honestly made me feel worse. And I would always feel the need to respond to them, thank you, like, I appreciate you caring, or I appreciate your attention, or your love, or whatnot. And I just want to let you know, if you're watching this video because you're experiencing something similar and you're grieving, that you don't have to tell people that they thank you for doing something. You don't have to confirm to people that their message was helpful. You don't have to reply to anyone. However way you grieve, you need to make sure that that's healthy for you. I know a lot of you out there that aren't grieving will understand this, but I'm just saying that you don't have to make people that message you or tell you things that are hurtful during your grieving process that they are validated. You don't have to tell them thank you for saying that to me. A lot of times people I barely knew would say, hey, you know what, if you need to call me and talk to me, let me know. And it's like, well, you didn't know her, you barely know me, you don't know what I'm going, like, people don't know how to handle grief is what I'm saying. People don't know how to do things when they're grieving, when you're grieving. And I didn't even know what grieving was, and that's why I was so glad that I had resources on campus, like my occupational therapy professor, who could tell me not about the 5 stages of grief, which is a wrong. The 5 stages of grief is for people that are about to die, people that are, in the last stage of their life cycle and are preparing for their own death and coming to terms with what that means to die as yourself. The 5 stages of grief is not for people that have lost people. What helped me most was learning about the dual process model, which means that when I was grieving, and still to this day, I go through restoration orientation and through active grief. So yes, similar to right now in this moment, I'm actively experiencing the grief, and I'm experiencing that loss, and especially, the weekend that was the anniversary of her death, I had some very sleepless nights thinking about how much I miss her, and you really actively experience it, but that's not the entire time. You don't have to feel guilty if you're not feeling that. That'll happen sometimes, and maybe most of the time. And then the other part of the time, you'll go through restoration orientation, where you're going through normal things in your life, whether it's grocery shopping or going to class or going to the gym, and it won't feel like you're grieving in that moment, and that's totally fine. There are kind of these two sides to grief, and I think now I'm almost entirely restoration orientation, and I used to be more so in the active grief part, especially for the first month after grieving her. But then when I went home and I did things we usually would have done together, that really, really hurt. So I'm just saying, you don't always have to feel sad when you're grieving someone. A lot of it is really sad, like right now. But a lot of it you shouldn't feel guilty if you're not always sad, is what I'm saying. There's a lot of healthy ways to grieve. And a lot of people will tell me in the comment section or in person, like, she'll always be with you. Which I feel, I mean, when I see like a super beautiful sunset, it kind of feels like she's connecting with me. And I know that everyone sees that same sunset and it's not just for me, but that's sort of my spiritual connection to her. What really hurts about this is that I no longer have a two-way connection with her. So all the time I'll see a French bulldog, or I'll hear something about Kim Kardashian, or I'll want advice on which dress to buy at a store, and I'll think of her because those connect me to her. But so I still have this connection to her. She's still an active part of my life, but I don't get to have that two-way connection with her where she's responding back to me. She can't communicate with me any longer, and that's what really, really hurts. And I'm not sure if any of you saw the episode of Black Mirror about grief, but every time I see a show or a song like Lady Gaga's album Joanne that's about grief and loss, it feels so, so good to know that other people are grieving in similar ways as me. That's why I'm making this video. But I'm not sure if you saw the episode of Black Mirror about grief, but that episode was all about how much you crave that two-way connection, and a lot of people thought that was the most revolting episode of Black Mirror and just disturbing. And every time someone would say that, I would say, well, thank God you've never experienced that kind of loss. Like, in some ways, I'm just so jealous of people that have never felt this sort of daily loss of someone that was in their life in every aspect. I mean, I am who I am because of her. She was a part of my identity. She was more than just a friend. She was my best friend, and it was just us two, like, day in, day out for 20 years. And so when people don't understand why you would want your deceased loved one to keep living in some way for you, they clearly have never experienced that. Because if I had the technology in that, I'm not going to talk about the episode because you should frankly just watch it, but if I had the technology in that episode to have some incarnation of Sarah to talk to, my God, that feels so, so good. And especially in the beginning days of her grief, I just wanted to talk to her. And the only really way I get to have that two-way connection is in my dreams. I mean, sometimes I'll dream about her, and I'm not even sure if you can hear me right now because I'm like crying and talking, but like there quite frankly was no other way this video was gonna get made than me crying while making it. Like that was inevitable, and I'm not gonna apologize for it because I think crying is so, so cathartic and wonderful, and I love getting to experience my emotions like this. But when I dream about her, it feels so good. Because for 8 hours of sleep or however long that dream was, like, I get to have her in some sense of my life again, and it feels so good that way. And that's mainly what hurts about grief, whether you've lost someone through suicide or what have you, like not having that two-way connection, because I will always think of her. My thoughts can't move an inch without bumping into some piece of her. She's everywhere to me. And I'm sorry to say it for those of you that are watching this video because you've lost someone, but death like changes you. There's a clear before and after of the way I go about my life and my approach to my life, because I have this void, this loss, this hole in my heart for her. My heart's over here. I don't know why I'm tapping here. Grieving over Sarah just feels like there's like this familiar, as Anna Kana explained it, like this familiar knot like in my heart, and I'm just pulling it loose every time I cry about her. It's this familiar pain when you're grieving, and you keep coming back to it because it never really goes away. And people will always tell me, you know, like, it'll get better over time, and it does definitely get better. I mean, most of the time, most days, I'm not sobbing over her. But you have to understand, like, you will never live the same way again. And I'm not being dramatic, that's just purely what it is. And I never understood that before death. I never understood what it was really like to go through your life having lost someone. And that is why it's so important that we talk about suicide in the right way, because ultimately it doesn't have to happen. But when we're watching shows like 13 Reasons Why tell us exactly how not to save someone, it just ruins our chances of actually fixing this issue and getting more awareness for mental illness. And if I could leave you with anything from this knot of just a bunch of feelings of a video, it's that you should never feel like you have to keep up with other people. I think one of Sarah's main problems was that even when she was in the depths of just illness, it was mental illness, but it was also physical illness. When she was in the depths of this, she still felt like she had to keep up with other people, and that she had to keep up this facade, that she had to keep up being, you know, her same self. But no, when you are in pain, or even when you're not in pain, your health is your number one priority. You shouldn't feel like you have to keep going to school if it's at an extreme detriment to your health. You shouldn't feel like you have to go somewhere if you need to take time for yourself to be healthy. Like, your health is your number one priority, and that should come before anything else. Like, your health is so important to me. I will tell you, every path to success, the first step is valuing your health and taking steps and prioritizing your health. That is the first way to succeed every single time. If you forget about your health and you do not take care of yourself and you do not seek treatment, you not prioritizing your health is doing disservice to not just yourself and your success, but everyone around you that wants to see you doing well. I'm just really proud and happy that you watched this video, especially if you're listening to me now and have watched the whole way through, because it means you're coming into this with an open mind and that you're really trying to learn about these issues from, in my opinion, an authentic source. You know, I'm not a fictionalized story. This is a real story, and truly how I feel. And I mean, some of these things may be shocking to you, may be surprising, maybe a little bit like insulting to you. I'm not sure how you're going to respond to this video, but I know that if at least just one person watches this and gains any bit of strength or knowledge from it, I just want people to know that you're not alone in going through this. I wish no one had to go through this. So thank you so much for watching. I will see you all next time with a very different topic of a video, I'm sure. But nonetheless, love you all, and Kath are out.